Hey everyone, it's Cashew. Today's adventure brings us to Somerset, Kentucky, to the International Paranormal Museum and Research Center. I don't know much about it, but I did see their booth at the Mothman Festival, and I thought I'd come down and take a look. So let's go check it out. Our adventure starts here. The museum is in the basement of the Carnegie Community Arts Center. I don't know if you can tell, but that's an old Coca-Cola sign painted on the side of that building. As I said, it's in the basement of the Carnegie Center, and you can recognize it by the sign. It has a UFO picking up the Loch Ness Monster.
The other side's my favorite. Yeah.
Here's a cool model of Nessie. Here's an excellent example of a jackalope.
My name is Kyle Cadell. I'm the owner of the International Paranormal Museum and Research Center here in Somerset, Kentucky. We've been open for a little over 2 years. Me and my ghost hunting team have been investigating the strange for about 15 years. We started out right after high school, ghost hunting, a couple years into doing our regular investigations. Once actually at downtown Somerset Cemetery, in the middle of a ghost hunt, we saw a UFO, and it was just a green light floating over our town for about 20 minutes, and then it just shot off west. And so that piqued our interest into the UFOs, and from there we just got into all the weird stuff. So our museum's the culmination of all the weird stuff we've ever done. We cover ghosts, we have our ghost hunting equipment, we have our haunted and cursed objects that we've taken out of our investigations. We have Bigfoot stuff, other monster stuff, alien stuff, serial killers, psychic, voodoo, witchcraft, a little bit of everything.
And then, are you associated with MUFON in any way?
Yeah, I'm actually a MUFON member here regionally. We are trying to get together, and two of my investigation teams, we're actually trying to become like registered field investigators for MUFON. We joined about a year ago at the Alien Con thing, and have actually been able to submit a report within the year here locally of something crazy that's happened. So.
And can you show some of this stuff over here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start you off over here with little Mark Thatcher. Mark Thatcher here is unfortunately passed away as he was a little kid. At this age, I believe he was 9 when he died. Mark used to play with the kids that used to live on our property. Mark was 9 years old, and he came over one day playing with a bow and arrow, and is playing with, they think it was his brother and some of the kids that lived here. And no one's exactly sure what happened, but eventually he got shot by a stray arrow and passed away here on our property. So his family was devastated. They were actually one of the higher up families in Somerset at the time. So they had this portrait painted of him. Years later, they donated it to the library, which my museum here is in the old library building. So this portrait hung here for years. And whenever it was here, we had a lot of paranormal activity that was associated with it. Every single librarian that ever had our office down here in our basement saw him running around in our main room back here that's now called the Bistro. And his favorite thing to do was mess with our elevator. The elevator used to constantly go up and down by itself with no one on it. So about 10 years ago, the library built a brand new facility, and they moved his portrait over there. It hangs prominently in a room called the Kentucky Room there. And a lot of that activity now has died down in our building. It happens occasionally. Our elevator still moves occasionally. We see him running and laughing downstairs. But their brand new elevator at their brand new building will go up and down by itself. And almost everyone that's worked in the teen section, which is the basement area below where his photograph is, claims to have seen him. So this is actually a recreation of the Dogman of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, or the Beast of Bray Road. He was seen in Elkhorn in the 80s most commonly, and he was seen constantly by people. If you're familiar with the author Linda Godfrey actually got her start specifically recording the evidence of the Bray Road beast and compiling it into a book. But I remember she has this story how she met with one of the local animal control guys to talk about the beast of Bray Road, and he had a file on his desk that was labeled werewolf, and it had all of the sightings of this animal in that file, and that just kind of struck her as that a government official had a file called werewolf that they were investigating. So
okay. You said this was all from Kentucky?
Yeah, all of these footprints here, or all of these castings were actually made by a guy named Thomas Shea. He runs the Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group. And these front two here, he actually donated to us because he found them here in Pulaski County. They're from May 2007, and they were under what's called the Fishing Creek Bridge. In May 2007, Lake Cumberland was down because the Wolf Creek Dam was being fixed. And so there's an area that was exposed to land, or there's land that was exposed that usually isn't, and these footprints started showing up all over. So Thomas Shea brought his group down, and they actually found, I think, 6 footprints all in the same area. And as far as our museum goes, these are the only originals we have. Every other casting we have is a copy of it, but these are the actual castings they made on site during the investigation.
And what can you tell me about the Yeti down below?
Yeah, so this is actually the famous Shipton cast, as it's known, that was found on an expedition of the Himalayan mountains there. So this is actually the footprint that got Sir Edmund Hillary interested in going and making a whole expedition to the Himalayas. While he was actually over there, he went into a Tibetan monastery, and the monks there showed him a mummified Yeti scalp and a mummified Yeti hand that they had in their collection. They had found locally, and in true explorer fashion, Sir Edmund Hillary, when no one was looking, stole some bones from the Yeti hand and replaced them with some animal bones, and then smuggled them back into America inside a Jimmy Stewart suitcase. And so Jimmy Stewart had a hand in getting some stolen Sasquatch bones to America.
The reason you find the Buddhist-related items in the Yeti case is because the Yeti is found in Tibet, and the Dalai Lama used to live in Tibet. He now lives in India.
We have our voodoo, our witchcraft, and our communing with the dead here. Highlight in this case is definitely going to be this creepy little dude right there. So he's an actual voodoo doll. The rest of our voodoo dolls are more artistic recreations or even souvenirs. But that guy is from Slidell, Louisiana, and he was made in the 20s, so he's about 100 years old. And they didn't say this when I bought him, but it looks like he has actual human hair on his head. But each claw and shell and rock there is a different talisman for the spells he was created for. And his coup de grace is that he's actually filled with graveyard dirt and human teeth. So he's the only thing that creeped me out enough I didn't even really want to touch it to put it into the case.
And this is a Ouija board serving tray made by the Haskellite Manufacturing Company, and they made home goods. Here's a rather sinister looking Ouija board.
Yeah, and we actually got this statue in the recreation of the Marie Laveau tomb down there at her still open voodoo shop in the French Quarter there. So it's, to be honest, mostly a tourist attraction now, but you can still go and get actual spells created, actual ingredients for your voodoo and stuff there.
This is this an autopsy table?
Close. This is actually an antique cooling table. So it's about 120 plus years old, and it's from a time when your loved ones died and you actually had your funeral, or their funeral at your house instead of going to a funeral home. So it's a cooling table that the morticians would send over. It folds up, and you'd lay your loved one on it. The holes are because it came with ice boxes that would help keep the body cool for the whole viewing of the funeral. Afterwards, you would just pack this table up and ship it back. So with that information, it's kind of gross, all this water damage.
I'm not sure if you can tell from the glare, but this is a reference to the Mothman Museum in the video game Fallout 76. Now, is that the actual photo of the Silver Bridge before it collapsed?
Yep, that is taken, I believe, the same year in '67 before it collapsed there. And the Silver Bridge is, of course, what connected Gallipolis, Ohio to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Fell on December 15th, 1967, as kind of like the end note of the whole Mothman phenomena.
And then you also said because of that collapse that West Virginia, their bridge safety board?
Yeah, they were wholly as a state unprepared for a disaster as big as the Silver Bridge. 46 people died in the collapse, and they had no sort of infrastructure for dealing with this kind of disaster. So because the Silver Bridge collapsed, they actually started the West Virginia Bridge Safety Division of the Department of Transportation. And not long after the Silver Bridge, within a couple years, there was another similar bridge in West Virginia that it turns out was on the verge of collapsing. Because of what they learned with the Silver Bridge collapse, they were able to avoid that disaster and saved who knows how many lives. The museum is actually this hunk of concrete down here, and that's because that is an actual piece of the Silver Bridge. It's from the Gallipolis support side of the bridge, and it was donated to us by a guy named Nate Anderson in Barberville, West Virginia there. And Nate actually saw Jacob the Carpetbagger's YouTube video, fell in love with our museum and contacted us and said, "Hey, we have a piece of the Silver Bridge. It's been out in my flower bed for about 3 years. Do you want it?" And I said, yeah, I'll take that.
And then what were you telling me about the this replica of the statue that's outside of the Mothman Museum?
Yeah, so this is, like you said, an actual replica of the 20 foot tall statue that sits in Point Pleasant, downtown Point Pleasant, outside the Mothman Museum. And this replica was actually made by the daughter of the gentleman that created the statue. The statue was created by this guy named Bob Roach, who really wasn't even into the Mothman or anything. He was an artist that happened to make historical statues. If you go around Point Pleasant, you can actually find, I think, 6 total of the statues he's made of different local people, Cornstalk and different pioneers in the area. But his most famous work will always be this Mothman statue. And his daughter actually still sells replicas of these statues every year at the Mothman Festival. Yeah, we have...
So this brick is from Point Pleasant?
Yeah, that's from the original streets of Point Pleasant. Under the concrete, it's all bricks there.
What does that date back to, do you think?
I don't have a good date on it, but I know that they've stopped making the bricks, like doing that in the 50s.
Oh, okay.
So it's probably, like, that would be the newest it could be, I think. Be written by Mary Heyer, that article is.
And this was shortly after the bridge collapse, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is...
December 19th.
Yeah, that's... and December 15th was when it collapsed, so this was still in the process of trying to recover everyone.
And you were saying what now? That just this summer?
Yeah,
2019?
Just the summer of 2019, they finally dragged the remains of the Silver Bridge out of the Ohio River. It had been too expensive of a process and not as urgent up until now. But they are actually making a art installation out of it that is going to be in front of the bridge safety office for West Virginia. Before the Silver Bridge collapsed, they had 0 tragedies like this, and so they were completely unprepared. And because of the Silver Bridge collapse, they formed this bridge safety committee and actually found another bridge that was on the verge of collapsing, and they stopped it and saved like another disaster from happening.
And this one's dated December 18th, 1967. So 3 days after the bridge collapsed.
Dramatic readings of local legends. One's the Mason County Mothman, on the other side it's the Curse of Cornstalk. And these were read by Anne McCoy, and they're actually like dramatic readings of poems retelling the story of the Mothman or of Chief Cornstalk, who they believe cursed the area hundreds of years before.
Yeah, I thought I saw copies of these at the Mothman Museum about a year ago.
They have them there, and then we got them from a place called the Mothman Antique Mall, right across the corner. These have never been played, and they were $10 each, so we were pretty happy with that.
Now, is this a vintage postcard of the low end?
It is a current one, but it's a reprint of one that they had. I think they said in the 20s.
And you said you stayed there?
Yeah, we actually got to stay there during the most recent Mothman Museum or Mothman Festival, and it's very awesome. There's 2 or 3 rooms that are specifically haunted, but of course the whole building's been open since 1904, and has a lot of weird stuff that happens in it.
Did you notice anything weird?
Very luckily for my girlfriend, we did not have a haunted room this time, and we didn't have anything too weird happen. But you can notice even in the whole energy, we explored the hotel late at night, and you could tell that the whole energy is even off, you know. Of course, the hotel's going to be a little creepy at night, especially an older one, but it just felt like there were areas that were occupied even though there was no one there, and at one point we kept on hearing someone following us around the hallways as we were looking around, but that was really as far as that went.
That looks almost like a 3D printing of Nessie.
Yeah,
that gray one.
It's done by this guy in West Virginia, I believe. We actually got it at the Mothman Festival. Yeah, here's our Nessie / plesiosaur section here. A few of our items here are actually from the gift shop at Loch Ness. My business partner's been over there twice now, and has been able to charter boats looking for the creature. But my favorite piece out of all that is we actually have that tooth there, the plesiosaur tooth that is 70 to 100 million years old.
That's a pretty cool Bigfoot game.
Yeah, the way that kind of the whole paranormal world's working right now is Bigfoot's pretty popular, and you know, he's obviously left more evidence than most ghosts or anything. He's left footprints. So we've actually garnered a pretty large Bigfoot collection here. We have footcasts from all over the country. We even have a small one from Somalia. That's from their orang pendek, which that is a juvenile creature, but it still usually doesn't get as large as our North American Bigfoot.
Here's a Bigfoot footprint with a bust of Bigfoot.
Actually, our map from, we actually got it from the Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine. Our friend Lauren Coleman runs it. And this has some of our most famous monsters in America kind of just laid out to give you an idea of how weird our country really is.
So this is your section on Cheng Bunker?
Yeah, we actually, a couple years ago, went out to Mount Airy, North Carolina, where they're laid to rest, and did an investigation of them. But they're the original Siamese twins. They're actually the reason why we use that term. They were connected their entire lives. There was an autopsy done after they passed on, and it turns out that this connected their bloodstream, and they shared a liver, and that was all that kept them together for their entire lives. So they were born in Thailand, what was then Siam, and then met with P.T. Barnum, and was one of the mainstays in his freak show, in his sideshow attraction. And
he had a lot of kids, didn't they?
They did, yeah. They became U.S. citizens, and in North Carolina met a set of sisters that they ended up marrying, and between the 4 of them, they had 21 children. So Mount Airy, North Carolina is also famous for being the town Andy Griffith's from. It's very Mayberry-like, and there's a giant Andy Griffith Museum there. And in the basement of the Andy Griffith Museum, there's a room that's completely dedicated to Cheng and Eng. And when we went, there was a TV playing a a video from a family reunion like 4 years before, and there were over 200 people that were direct descendants or spouses of direct descendants at their family reunion.
And then this is dirt from Changanang's grave?
Yeah, we got that out there as we did our investigation.
And there's an interesting story with her, isn't there?
Yeah, this her name is Gladys. She's kind of our mascot here. Originally, we got Gladys from a store here locally that up until the 80s was a clothing store. In the late 80s, they moved out and a bookstore moved in. And all the clothing store left behind was poor Gladys here. So the bookstore didn't really have a need for her, and they just kind of shoved her into a back storage room and kind of forgot about her for a little bit. This was in the late 80s, and about 8 years ago, the bookstore started renovating. And they found her, and all they really did with her was move her from the back storage room to one upstairs that was impossible to get to. And apparently she didn't like that, because after that she started moving around. There's an 8-month period where 10 separate times the owners locked up at night, came in the next morning, and she was in a different location than she was. My favorite story out of all those is the bookstore would occasionally do board game nights where you come and play games. And one night one of the gamers had to use the restroom, so she got up and walked into the back for the employee restroom and turned on the light, and Gladys is just standing right there. So obviously the employees all started threatening to quit. They didn't like her, they got bad vibes, and in addition to moving around, claimed that she would follow them with her eyes or wink or blink at them. And since we've been open, we've had about 12 people say that she's winked at them, and we've had 3 people say she's moved her eyes, and one of my employees has actually even caught her shifting her arm. Her elbow is like she's leaning on her elbow against the wall there, and she's caught her shifting her arm like to regroup there.
She has very intense eyes, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's a Griniker model, and their signature was the realistic eyes. And I like that she's also based on a real human being. There's a real Gladys out there somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to say the face looks very real as well.
Yeah, even like her neck detail there with her collarbone. It looks real.
Mm-hmm. Now, does this hand belong to her? Or?
Yeah, whenever we gathered Gladys up, we could not find her right arm. We could find her right hand, but we couldn't find her right arm or her right earring. So we picked her up, and we had a crawl space where we kept the haunted stuff before we were open. We left her down there for about a month, and then we had our first paranormal fair, and we got her out, and she had both of her earrings in. So it would have been a lot handier if she found that arm, though.
And then what's the story with the Fitzgerald 1848?
So this is actually one of my favorite pieces here. My business partner is a school teacher at our high school, and a few months before we were open, we had a student whose uncle died. They were cleaning out his house, and in his attic they found this letter with the bottle of bourbon in this box. The letter says, to anyone that would consider drinking this bourbon, read this letter first and proceed at your own peril. So it came with a full 2-page front and back letter here that is a very fantastical story about the uncle used to have music nights where him and his friends would come about once a month, and they'd all get together and play music at someone's house. And one night a gentleman showed up that played fiddle. They didn't realize until he left, but no one knew him. They all thought he came with someone else. So he played fiddle with him for a few hours. The letter says he was an incredible player, very Devil Went Down to Georgia-ish. And eventually this fiddle player produced this bottle of bourbon and insisted that everyone in the group drink with him. So after that, very shortly, a stranger said that he had to leave and asked if they wouldn't mind to watch his bottle of bourbon. They said sure, and he walked out. That's when they figured out no one knew him. And about a month later, they had another music night, and a friend was there that wasn't there previously and sang a sad song about a girlfriend breaking up with him. And as soon as he was done, grabbed the bottle of bourbon, poured himself a drink, and drank it down in a gulp. The letter says that he then clutched his throat as if he swallowed fire and ran out of the house. And following that, there was a full countywide manhunt, but no one, including their friends, ever saw this man again. So years go on, and everything kind of dies down. They don't have these music nights anymore, but literally the only consistent thing is on the anniversary of the music night, there would be a drink missing out of the bottle of bourbon. So the bottle of bourbon's from 74 at the very latest, and we assume it was in this attic for years. And when we got it the very first night from the student, we met him at a all-night restaurant here, and he told us the story. We thought it was super crazy, and we left at about 2:30 in the morning. I went home and went to sleep, and my business partner took the bottle, and as I mentioned, he had a crawl space where we kept all the haunted stuff before we were open, but it was late enough. Zach didn't want to fool with that, so he just left the letter and the bottle inside the box on the kitchen counter and went to sleep. Well, Zach's wife, Melissa, works nights at the hospital, so she got home a little bit after 6 o'clock in the morning, and he woke to her just screaming. So he stumbles out of bed and gets in the living room and sees that she's still outside the house and the front door standing open between them. And she's, Zach, did someone break in? Are you okay? Like, did someone rob us? What's going on? So they calm down and they check the whole house, and nothing's broken and nothing's missing, and there's no one hiding, and literally the only thing different is the bottle of bourbon is outside the box on the kitchen counter. This doll we bought secondhand originally and used as a trigger object for ghost hunting, because when you move it, it blinks, and when you squeak it, when you squeeze it, it squeaks. So we would use it at investigations. We thought there was a child. Here in Pulaski County, one night we used it successfully to where almost every single time we asked for it to blink, it blinked for us. And we finished that investigation, went to the headquarters and started reviewing the evidence. A few hours later, we got up and we looked at the doll, and it was still blinking like crazy. So we just shoved it with the haunted stuff, and it's been here ever since. But since we've opened, we have cameras that stay on all of our haunted stuff 24/7. And we've caught this doll falling off the shelf by itself twice now. The first time, no one had been in here for half an hour, and the second time, no one had been in here for about 12 hours. So it looks like something grabs it. Here. It looks like something grabs its hand because it starts to move over to the left and then tumbles down, flips onto the floor in front of the shelf here. We've heard it squeak when it fell when we were in the building and have no explanation for it.
This is a poster from Raymond Buckland's Museum of Witchcraft and Magick in Cleveland, Ohio. And in the description box, I'll have a link to that vlog that I shot too.
It's this, in the 50s to 60s, they started reporting seeing this creature out there that, for lack of a better description, was half of a goat and half of a man. Some of the ideas are that there was a circus train that went through on the trestle that runs by the Popelik Creek, and a goat escaped and somehow interbred with a human or something to lead this monstrosity. But in the area still, they say that this guy hangs out on the train trestle. The train trestle is this giant, tall train bridge that looks old and run down, but is definitely still active. And the goat man's point is he'll come and try to get you to go out onto this train trestle by using voice mimicking or making sounds to where you go to investigate. And once a train comes, there's no other option. There's nowhere to hang off of the bridge. There's nowhere to run back on the bridge. If a train comes while you're out there, unfortunately you are probably going to be hit by the train or jump off to your death.
And that's a railroad spike from the
train trestle out there at Popelik. And then next to it there, that's actually rust and concrete from the bridge as well.
And this is a piece of the wall from Alcatraz. Now, is that an actual key from Alcatraz, or is that something from the gift shop?
A gift shop. The Hopkins Hotel and stuff. Just because that's one of the most famous, or maybe the most well-documented alien encounter ever to happen in the state of Kentucky. In 1955, in a little town called Kelly, right outside of Hopkinsville, some people that were in the Sutton family farmhouse saw a UFO hovering over their area. So they ran inside and told the rest of the family. Of course, no one believed them. And a couple hours later, one of the women screamed. And it's because peeking in one of the windows was a small creature. This is actually life size, is supposedly what they look like. There's 10 to 15 of these things that supposedly got out of this craft and started harassing the family. They would come and peek in windows. They would climb trees and stuff around the house. And at one point, Lucky Sutton, who was the patriarch of the family, got his gun and went outside looking for one. And one was actually on the roof and grabbed his hair and tried to pull him onto the roof. They shot at these creatures a couple of times through the screen doors as they peeked at them. And it said that it made the sound of like a metal tin can rattling, and it like fell backwards and then got up and ran and hid somewhere. Like, no matter what they did, they couldn't stop these creatures. And then eventually, they noticed they didn't see any of them, so the family quickly went to the sheriff's office, came back with police, and of course the police saw that their house was shot all to hell from them, and other than that, they saw some glowing green substance that when they went to try to collect it, it dissipated. There was nothing to collect. And for the next 2.5 weeks, this family was hounded by media, by government officials from Fort Knox, which was just up the road, and it was so bad that they eventually had to flee the area. But because of the Fort Knox government officials debriefing them so much, we now have more information about this than any other alien encounter that's happened in Kentucky.
And these are from the Roswell crash, correct?
Yeah, these are recreations of the two, after the Roswell crash, these are the first two newspapers before the government officially started the story of being a weather balloon. So, and then this interpretation of the Roswell Gray was actually done for a 1995 movie called Roswell the UFO Cover-Up, starring Kyle MacLachlan. Yeah, so in a little area called Braxton County, West Virginia, in September of 1952, a UFO was seen. It's Flatwoods in Braxton County is a very small area. There's a group of about 10 school kids hanging outside and saw a UFO fly over them, and it looked like it landed over this hill that they were next to. So these kids, not having anything better to do, started running towards the field. And on their way out there, one of their teachers, this woman actually here, saw them running to the field, asked what they were doing. And the kids, this is the oldest of the eyewitnesses here, told her, said, "We just saw a UFO, we want to look at it." She goes, "Well, let me come with." And their teacher led them out onto this private property and eventually found a big glowing red-orange UFO that had landed. And coming out of the UFO was a a fog that smelled like, eyewitnesses said, hot molten metal, basically melted metal. And the Flatwoods Monster came out of this craft. The Flatwoods Monster was about a 12 to 15 foot tall. They call it a monster, but honestly they think it was some sort of smaller craft because it moved very mechanically once it exited the spaceship, and its eyes here turned into spotlights and started scanning the horizon. An interesting side note is that same day there was actually 6 UFOs seen in the West Virginia area, all identical, and 2 of them exploded in the air. One of them went on and was seen in Florida. One of them disappeared, and then this one landed in Flatwoods. And so this creature got out, and it looked like it was searching for some of its friends. It eventually saw the group of teenagers and little kids and the woman, and started running, or gliding towards them. So they took off and got the police and came back. And when the police came back, there was absolutely nothing in the area except a little bit of the fog and that still horrendous metal smell that they had. But later they found an eyewitness that was watching through binoculars from another mountain or another hill in the area. And he said that after the humans ran off, this thing, the Flatwoods monster, got back into the craft, and it slowly shrank until the craft completely disappeared from our dimension.
Here's the Hopkinsville Goblin, and of course, you know the Mothman. That was a lot of fun, and I want to thank Kyle of the Paranormal Museum for showing me around and answering my questions. And if you come down here, I think you'll enjoy it. Whether you believe in UFOs and cryptids or you don't, I really think you'll enjoy this place. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. In the description box down below, I'll have links to my Loveland Frogman and my Mothman videos. And I'll also have links to my PayPal, my Patreon page, as well as my Teespring. So until next time, everyone, this is Cashew signing off. And I think the shot of the moon here provides excellent atmosphere for this video.